Welcome to the Discourses for Higher Enlightenment channel and another session of the Medford and Anonymous series. Please stay tuned. Going to be giving Anonymous a call, which we haven't spoken to in a while, and he always offers up some helpful advice and insights on our spiritual journey beyond the confusion of the material world.
Hello, is this the Anonymous listeners?
Yes, we've all been waiting for your. It's been a while. I know you've been just came back from your annual retreat to the Edgar Cayce Center.
Yeah, it was great to see some new people. I met some new people, some younger folks, and some of the older folks came back, and great speakers. Sidney Kirkpatrick, who wrote the recent biography, 20 years ago now, the American Prophet, was there with his wife Nancy. Both gave excellent talks, very inspiring and funny. And we had, of course, Kevin Tedeschi, the president there, spoke, and a little sad moment because one of the people who helped to bring him into this river, so to speak, she passed away this past year, since last year. As well as a biographer of Cayce's secretary, Mickey Klug, who was a very generous woman. She talked with me, at length, from when I'd call her up, she was down in Virginia, sweet southern accent. She passed on also. So, every year you find a few. Ann Clapp, who was the first person I went to hear years ago in the 80s, she spoke about Atlantis and Egypt, ancient Atlantis and Egypt. And she's also passed on. These people, up there in years. But they were, newcomers, and, it was delightful to be there. And, Larry from Arkansas, and, he brought his wife, she had a great time, and Dave, the chiropractor, with his wife, Thomas, were in the room next to me. So it was really good. It's like a family reunion, The beach is beautiful. It's just inspiring to see people coming from all over the world, really, to affirm and recommit or be inspired to continue on. And there's somebody, just to leave off with that real quick, I really want to talk about other people besides Edgar, who also, were used by God in our time. But I'll just leave off saying, Sidney Kirkpatrick and his wife wrote a recent book called True Tales about people who encountered Edgar and were helped, as usual, by people who the doctors could not help. And there's one segment in there on somebody called the Little Prophetess, who was one of the really very, more enlightened souls to come into the planet over 80 years ago. And just the way he spoke about her is one of those really rare, even his parents were told, you have a rare spirit here, be very cautious and sensitive in how you raise her. And so I won't say too much other than to say all the stories in the book are true tales. They're inspiring. But the one on the Little Prophetess, I got to say, she's still here. She was, just to say, she was prophesying at 2-3 years old in Latin. And she was written up quite early on. But it's such inspiring reading for our times that I just say anybody who knows some of the things I've been saying, they'll find a wealth of nourishment, within those pages. So it was beautiful. I'm looking forward already to going back next year. So what I was thinking of, Medford, was some of the other people who have been used by the creative intelligence, especially, as we go along, we hear more and more what disregard, our so-called leaders have for us. They're millionaires, all of these congresspeople, senators, sometimes over some of them, and they don't want health care for the regular folks, even though they're supposed to be working for us. So the hypocrisy, right, just from the start, is apparent. No health care for folks who are suffering on all kinds of levels. So when you see these things in the expressions of such lack of spiritual, awareness, obvious, we're going to need all the help and inspiration we can get of who to look to. So I found a bunch of people that I find are very inspiring to me, and I think people will discover none of them were about ripping people off with excessive fees, to get access to your higher mind, or people are taken away from their families, like they'll do with certain religious movements, or one that's even called religious, like Scientology, where they'll shun you. You can't even talk. They won't allow you to talk. If anybody's seen those episodes with that actress, talking about her experiences with Scientology on Cablevision. So any movement that doesn't have the fruits of the Spirit for me, compassion, patience, or they try and divide families up, I'd say very strongly, beware. So these are people that nobody, I feel very responsible to turn people onto, because you won't get, any of that going on with any of them. Though in truth, most of them have passed on, but their experiences will speak to all of us of how embracing, compassionate and graceful our Creator is in reaching out to any of us who reach out to it. So, you have any questions?
Well, I was going to mention, going back to the politicians, it's interesting how there's no money. It seems to be a Herculean effort for health care, and there's no money for it, and this and that. But when it comes to war, no one argues about that. There's no debate, even between both parties. There's no debates at all.
Excellent point. It's the same mantra they got over and over again. We got no money for health care. We got no money for infrastructure. We got no money for giving people more of a living wage. We got no money. But they got money all the time for these endless, wars that Eisenhower warned against with the corporations making money. That they always have money for. And by the way, whenever you hear about the Social Security being in trouble, what they don't tell you is they've been tapping into that for war and other things for many years. I believe it started with Reagan. And so it's like you put $200,000 in the bank, and I start using it, and you're down to 10,000. Or I project, Medford, you're going to run out of money in 10 years because I'm tapping into it. That money was put aside by you for your future, and I'm tapping into it, and I'm telling you, you better watch out. You're going to run out of money. Well, they've been tapping into it. They're not supposed to. They're using it for other things, and then they try and scare people. Oh, we got to cut back. We got to cut back on how much we're giving, or take away some money. But they don't tell you the whole story. They're using it for other purposes than people's security. So people are waking up more and more to these are not the people to trust. For the most part, you may get one or two stick up their neck once in a while, but they don't get put on the debates. It's been obvious. Going back to Ralph Nader, Jill Stein recently, they just aren't included in the debates, or that Kucinich, another one who was early on against these fake wars. So here's some people I would say lend the ear to more and more. By the way, I recently just cut down on my cable. I cut off my CNN. I cut off all that because it's the same mantra every day. It's Russia, Russia, Russia. The Fukushima releasing hundreds of thousands of radioactive gallons of water a day for the last 5 or so years. Not a word. Flint, Michigan, with the pipes, with the people giving kids, lead, mercury, making them where they can't develop mentally. And they'll grab somebody on the corner, selling dope or pot to be more, something less hazardous, and they're in jail for 20 years. All those politicians, nothing happened to them. With the greed where they tapped into a polluted river for people's water. So we got no money for any of that. But, let's look at Syria, and after that, let's look at China and Russia. So these people who never went to war, and more ignorant and prideful than I have to say than some of the angels that even fell. So that we don't talk about. We don't talk about any of that. So when you hear all these things, folks, or these things that can scare you, especially if you're not doing your meditation and your good deeds, I would say let that be a reminder every time you hear these things. When you do search out other sources, like whoever else you tap into, for more of the.
Well, this is actually a good thing, because I think as that becomes apparent, we'll begin to look for other sources and other people who have, as we should say, these fruits of the Spirit. The people who have empathy and kindness and care and concern, and that's who you're gonna give us some information on that.
Yes. So enough with the other folks, because they do get our attention too much. But here's some folks I've discovered that anybody can, tap in on the book or YouTube, and you're going to be amazed what you're hearing about. Okay, so we got Walter Russell. Walter Russell was born May 19th, 1871 in Boston, Mass. He died May 19th, 1963, Swanoa, Virginia. He also showed what happens when we surrender in humility to the creative intelligence of all life. Now, without schooling, he became an artist in life, as well as an author, a painter, and we're talking really well done, creative outlets, productions. Sculpture, which he picked up in his 50s, and sculptured people like Franklin Roosevelt, Mark Twain. Scientist, right up there, with the top folks that he was. I think one famous scientist tried to put him down in the New York Times, and later he had to apologize for that. That what he was saying is actually, true. And he became a great musician, philosopher, an architect. There's a book that I first turned on to him by Glenn Clark, who wrote a lot of inspiring books about inspiring people. And it's called The Man Who Tapped into the Secret of the Universe. It's an excellent start. It's available on Amazon. Though you can hear it on YouTube with somebody speaking from the book also. And then he's got 3 talks, what he had to say about meditation. Now, there's a robotic voice speaking, but the words are really pertinent. So if you could overlook the robotic voice speaking words from his writings, there's 3 parts on the meditation, what it does, how important it is. Also on YouTube, there's a secret of working knowingly with God. And then there's another one, Walter Russell's Illumination, which is excellent in describing what happens when he's in communion with God, taken up into his higher consciousness. There's another talk, which is pertinent today, he gave to high-ranking military men on Armed Forces Day. And it's called The Dawn of a New Day in Human Relations. It's honest and direct, and it's responsible on the causes and cures for war, and how nations should be aware of what we sow. It's a talk that I wish some of the generals will listen to today. Really, uphold the Constitution against enemies, not just foreign, but domestic, as it says. Now, Russell, it was a man of genius who also had a helpmate in his choice of a very spiritual woman, Leo Russell. She's also became a writer, and you could see her, a bio of her on YouTube, both of them on their lives, and you see their home with the works of art, and an intro by Eddie Albert, the actor from Green Acres, also in connection with him with Cayce too, and somebody he went to that Cayce was sending people to this Harold J. Riley, which Eddie Albert went to. And as happens in the political and spiritual spectrum, there are like Watergate type erasures to keep us from the flowing stream of eternal truths, which tapped into and acted upon will set us free from ignorance and its attendant pains on all levels of our being. So that's Walter Russell, and started up off with humble existence, poor. And how he tapped in early on, even once a year on his birthday, he would go up to seclusion in the woods and have a very illuminating experiences with, God, or the intelligence behind everything. So another one. You got Kathryn Kuhlman, May 9th, 1907 born to February 20th, 1976. YouTube, you'll see, you put in her name. She starts off with like a 4-minute talk on the Holy Spirit, which if you press that talk, you see a lot of other talks come up from her. And the obvious enthusiasm and joy and the care for others, it's easily seen in her face, and it's heard in her vocal tones. Here's another example of God using someone uneducated and simple in her small town out west, who said maybe it was easy for her as she had no talent and no obvious beauty or education, so that she had nothing, and yet she offered that nothingness to God early on. And watch how what she admitted in secret is taken to be seen and heard in such miraculous ways to the multitudes, as you will inspiringly see in her talks, the healing services to at least 20,000 in the auditorium she will use. There's much humor mixed in with the tears at these services. Unfortunately, there's more and more commercials coming on when she's talking, so it interrupts it a bit, so you have to pause it and just continue it. But she's a great example of the power of God's promises proven real. I love that she would insist. This is what separated her apart from many, you see about healing services claiming to be channels for healing. She would insist that those who were healed go to the doctors and get a checkup after the healing. And it had the effect, as I saw in one service, of the doctors not only sending patients when they were at their wits' end of their ability to help the patients, they sent patients to her, as well as seeing them, many of them from prestigious healing centers, healing hospitals. They were in attendance at her services, and the joy expressed in her face. It's really beautiful to see. It's unlike services certainly I grew up with. And again, the power of the Holy Spirit to, work through somebody with no education again. It's like George Washington Carver said, again, in the future, there's going to be a spiritual renaissance led by simple folk, And these are examples of that insight of his, coming true more and more. So, Kathryn Kuhlman, when I first read her book, I Believe in Miracles, you hear like 20 stories of people who have major diseases, how they were cured. I even remember one guy had a drug problem with heroin that his pusher advised him to go to her. And he went into the service, and she had that insight that she would just point to somebody and say, "You need Christ." And he's looking around like, who's she talking to? And then he felt this spirit on him, and he actually ran out of the church, went home, took a double dose of heroin. And after that, he was drug-free without going through the, pain. And then at the end of the story, he's calling for the pusher to get in touch with him. So there's a lot of humor in the stories, but they're powerful. I mean, just very few books put a tear in my eye, but her books can do that. So that's Kathryn Kuhlman.
I never thought of that before, the value of, because we're looking for that experience ourselves, which we ultimately want, but the value of seeing the experience through others and saying, wow, this is real, they experienced it, I too can experience that. So the value of these examples can be very helpful.
Absolutely. And again, the insistence that they would go back to the doctor to get a checkup, and which led many doctors to wonder what's going on. And some of them who had the humility to admit that they're at their wits' end, and yet the doctors don't seem to want to know, like, what's going on here. It's the same thing happened with Kathryn Kuhlman, with the purity of just the spirit. There were some doctors, there's always those who are humble, and they came out there, and you'll see them. They, from John Hopkins or what was that one out west, the name's escaping me right now, but incredible, beautiful, inspiring, and you'll see she had a TV show once also, I Believe in Miracles, and just inspiring. You're going to feel a lot different than watching, one of these things on TV or what you hear repeatedly, the same negative stuff. So, another one, all right, that's Kathryn Kuhlman. That's another spiritual giant, okay. George Washington Carver, born January 1861 or 2, 64. They're not sure of his birth because, he was born into, his mom was enslaved. Died January 5th, 1943. He also meditated on God at 4 in the morning. Was used to glorify God in many ways, from discovering 300 uses for the peanut, as they talk about, he worked with the peanut, but especially what they don't tell you is he worked with kids who were paralyzed every weekend, and they were healed. To teaching the farmers how to rotate their crops to keep the soil healthy. And this was during the Depression, and he turned down hundreds of thousands of dollars from Thomas Edison to work with those farmers instead. And like Ralph Nader, he had one suit of clothes, and when asked to speak for a mere 10 minutes to many prejudiced against his color, they were so moved they let him speak for hours. And speaking of moved, the author of these inspiring books, Glenn Clark, wrote, when Carver prayed for him, his hair actually went up on his body. Glenn Clark wrote also a book, as he did with Walter Russell on him. He wrote a book called The Man Who Spoke with Flowers, about George Washington Carver. So Carver was a good friend of Gandhi's. He made food for him. Carver also prayed, he had an effect on Glenn Clark, with his hair going up. And again, with the oil of the peanut, like Cayce said, which could prevent arthritis, Carver used it also on these children. But I also believe he had such communion with the Holy Spirit that he also had used a channel for the healing on another level. So that's George Washington Carver. Yeah, another spiritual giant that doesn't get talked about much. So these are things to remember is above all is we are all gifts and gifted in this everlasting Christ Mass. We all contain a spark or a portion of the divine within us, and we have to search and dig and finally surrender our limited selfish selves, right, to rejoin or yoke or onto the greatness of being all that we can be, to take it away from that other service. In order to realize we are individuals, conscious, subconscious, superconsciously meant to be unified, yet to be part of the whole. So we're individuals, we're unique, can know ourselves to be ourselves, yet a part of the whole. Like individual cells operating within the whole body to be of a helpful and hopeful service down here. It's like we are playing, it's almost like we're playing tag with God and each other, and right now, you are it. We're a game of tag when we were kids. Another one out there is still in the body. It's Andrew Harvey. He was born in India and he left at 9. He's the youngest teacher ever at Oxford at 21. I think he was with English, and I think French was his subjects. He also, French literature. And he's got a lot of talks also about, spiritual activism, and he wrote about 30 books, so he's a good speaker. You can catch him on YouTube. He's still with us. I think he's in his early 70s. And another one who has something to say.
Well, it's interesting. A lot of times we think of the past as the past, but these examples of the past can be great foundations for the present.
Well, it's like the saying is, God's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, so the truth doesn't change. It's our perceptions and us as individuals in these recent waves of entry into the planet, that we tap into these universal truths. It's a perennial philosophy. It's a perennial, truth. Like they'll tell you God's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow, but you notice a lot of people get like religious lawyers and bad lawyers at that when they start to say, well, God's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So if you look at the Bible in Genesis, where it tells us to be vegetarian, later on they say, oh, God was merciful. You're allowed to eat this kind of meat, that kind of meat. And in a world of increasing population and starvation, 25,000 children a day, and cancer going up, and heart disease going up, and trees chopped down so cattle could graze for 2 years. It's like a death spiral that these corporations without ethics, it's like a cancer. Just like they make money off of cancer when there's cures, they'll do the same thing to the planet itself. They say we need 3 planets to where we're consuming. We don't have 3 planets. So it's going to end one way or the other. It's just that, it's better to do it in a creative way than the mass destruction that's going to happen otherwise. Because obviously these people, they are, ignorance, to put it in a nice, polite way, they're very ignorant. And again, the beauty of all these teachers is that expressing the eternal truths is that, and I always come back to Cayce, because here's the man with no education, that if it's true, and people should always challenge everything I'm saying, because I can tell you, 99% of what's out there, you better challenge. So just like God said, prove me, I'd say, prove what I'm saying. But if you look into the life of that man Cayce, the most documented spiritual man that Americans ever produced, perhaps the world, look at how he resisted his gift. Look how he was wrote about wherever he lived in the small town papers to eventually became the New York Times in 1910, 2 pages. You had one honest doctor saying, we got to investigate this guy. How did he know more than me with no education growing up on a farm than all my education? We have to investigate. And look at the investigations that happened. Look at the abuses they did to him. And wherever he lived, they wrote about him. And the way that he diagnosed people given up by doctors. The beauty of all this, again, is that it verifies that the invisible is real. Because how could he see a body from Virginia Beach to anywhere in the world with just name and address and diagnose like a doctor? That would verify that the invisible is real and it's practical and it's meant to be used on the earth, not spacing out in the sky somewhere. God is everywhere, including this planet. And not to divorce ourselves from what's going on down here with that kind of seemingly escapism, like some drug. There's no escape. You're just prolonging the misery and making it worse. This is practical. Spiritual truth is practical. It's feet on the ground, head in the stars. And the beauty is, again, the invisible world is real. It's intelligent. I was reading. I just finished a book called The Essence of Self-Realization. Another one of my, I have to say, teachers, of God through them. It's called The Essence of Self-Realization: The Wisdom of Power Mahansa Yogananda by Donald Walters. Another sweet man that I met years ago. Very intelligent, very joyful. And this is one of the essences of the book. I think if I can see, right? It says, life as seen through the eyes of worldly people seems infinitely complex. Mankind is driven by countless desires and seeks their fulfillment in innumerable ways. Certain fundamental drives there are. Charles Darwin identified the first of these drives. Life, he declared, is a ceaseless struggle for survival. This statement, however, is incomplete. Survival is one of life's fundamental instincts, certainly, but survival for what? Survival in a state of coma? Surely not. Consciousness, too, is a need universally felt. Living creatures not only want to exist, they want to be conscious of their existence. A third drive must be added, without which even perpetual conscious existence would be incomplete. For if a creature experiences too much suffering for too long, may it not prefer death to continued consciousness or existence? Living beings want to be conscious of their existence, but they also want consciously to enjoy that existence. The fundamental instinct of life, then, may be summed up thus. This certainly adds on much more than what Darwin left off on. A desire for continued conscious existence and a state of perpetual enjoyment. For continued existence, we may substitute the word immortality. Thus do all beings reveal their divine nature, for this is what God is, ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss, or Satchitananda, as Swami Shankara Acharya defined him many centuries ago. God may be defined in countless ways as infinite light, power, wisdom, and so forth. The most meaningful definition of all, however, in terms of life's most fundamental drives is Satchitananda. And the essence of the whole book is our inner nature is bliss. That's what we're all looking for, whether we're doing opiates or eating or searching, and even as he would say, even people in the mafia, everybody's searching for happiness, or joy. Of course, many go about it the wrong way and find out that what they end up with the riches with what they did, like a lot of these corporate heads. But again, if it's true what Cayce was able to do, not only does it show that karma is as real as gravity. You can't see it, but it operates. And that mirror of truth needs to be, and I don't know anybody else in America, I've been looking for 43 years now, that is so detailed and meticulously in what happened with him, that if it's true, again, with all the doctors testifying and all the skeptics, and by the way, skeptics write the best books. Sidney Kirkpatrick, the recent biographer, did not believe in these things. The first biographer, Tom Segura, went to college with Cayce's son, did not believe in these things. When he got sick, and the doctors gave him a prescription that they said would have bad side effects possibly, and he didn't listen to Cayce's advice on how to do other things because it would involve some work, he got totally paralyzed. Went to live with Cayce and followed the prescriptions advised from the higher source, and he recovered his arms but not his legs. And he wrote that beautiful first book ever make me cry, There's a River. The biography of Cayce came out 2 years before he died in 45. The book came out in 43. So again, that mirror needs to be put up to these people. With 60 rich, 40, 11 hours to eat, they got half the world's wealth. So they're going into a competitive mode of who's going to be the top one, But those persons need to see that truth, that what they're doing, like David Rockefeller, we talked about once, he ain't here no more. He couldn't take that money with him. And he's going to find out he's not less than water. He still exists. And what he did to cause a lot of suffering down here, we all have to answer for what we do. There's a sowing and a reaping. So this should be a note of warning to these people. They got families, they got wives, they got mothers, they got daughters, sons, grandchildren. What kind of concern? If you're a gambling man, that's what corporate capitalism is. It's like a casino. They're gambling. Why do you want to gamble with your soul? What if there is something there and you really have to answer for what you're doing? Do you really want to take that gamble? Especially as you're realizing all the things you strove for, thinking you'll make you happy, it's not working? And your honesty of your own self that you won't admit to anybody else, unless people actually have the eyes to see through your eyes and sense your vibe, that it's not working. You got a chance to turn around. You guys got a chance, maybe there's a lady amongst them, you got a chance to make for a golden age. Stop spending money, as Martin Luther King said, and we spend more money on death and destruction than we are on life. We could have it could be funny competitiveness, although I like the word cooperativeness, to rebuild your countries, clean the water, go for clean energy, the solar, the wind. We don't need to be doing all these things. It's like McDonald's recently got 25% profit last year, and they still fired 2,500 people putting computers. They don't care about us. We're expendable to them. Don't support a system of debt. That should be our answer to those people acting like that. And the folks working there should, hopefully they'll get a job in some more healthier place. So.
Well, you mentioned the consequences or the reaping what you sow, or some people say karma of what we do and who we follow. Are those spiritual forces that who we follow and what we do, that we create a certain outcome? Well, of course we create a certain outcome in the present here and now, but in the hereafter.
Well, yeah.
Or the spiritual. What's the spiritual consequences of following the wrong person or following the right people?
Well, if you go with the Holy Book, which, by the way, once I said the Bible was a book about love, I know a lot of people might have heard that. So, what? There's a lot of warfare, there's a lot of this and that. The beauty of the Bible is, remember, it's a struggle for understanding God. I believe it's culminated in Jesus, who was Christed. But it's not, like the Jews, the ancient Jews, what was counted for righteousness is they tried to understand God. Most of them didn't succeed. Look at the way they treated their own prophets. They did not succeed. Most of them didn't make it to the promised land. That's just stated. It tells you the actual faults and the ignorance and the pride that manifested. But they tried. And like David, he sinned, but he never sinned the same sin again. But so it's honest in that. So when I say it's a book about love, it's a book, in essence, it's a book showing us how to be living a loving life, but it shows you what happens when we don't follow that, those loving reminders. The highest love in our lives we ever experienced in a relationship with most of us, or nature, with a pet, it's just a bit of what there is, but even that bit, which is higher than everything else compared to it in our lives, we know we can't express it totally with words. Words is just a cup to be filled by the Spirit, a chalice. but the ocean of spirit is much greater than the expressions of even the geniuses. It's a big wave that comes in with their paintings or their dance or their movies, or their whatever it is that they express creatively. And if you read their lives, they always tell you they only touched a little bit of what's there. So these are all the greatest minds, testifying that, there's much more than we can ever put into words. So we shouldn't get too caught up on the words, So in the Bible, there is an example of a very rich person who did not take care of the poor, and he was in a place of suffering. Now, I don't believe in an eternal hell anymore, because I think that very much limits the notion of a loving God. But I do believe in hell on earth and up in the spirit world, down in the spirit world, but not forever. There is a compassion, much more than ours with God, and people are purified and sent off again down here to work out the insights, the reflections from the subconscious mind or the book of life, and have another chance. David Rockefeller will come back another time, until we get it right. I mean, this is a learning experience. We're here to learn what is love and how to express it, not just intellectualize about it, but how to express it. That's where the growth takes place, in expressing these concepts. So these are great examples of people who are, showing that these realities are true. And what more can you ask for when you see people who are uneducated? Now, Swami Kriyananda went to college, but also he knew. He studied science, he studied philosophy. He found the limitations in them until he finally realized, the worthwhile study of man and woman is us. This, without finding ourselves, we are dangerous. We're more dangerous than the wild beasts in the jungle. Look what we do to make dollars that we don't need. We bomb women and children. We cause people to go out. This is the thing. Like, you look at these commercials on TV, pushing all these drugs. These programs are drug pushers. Would you go to a drug dealer for telling you the truth about what's going on all over the world?
Well, it's funny. I once had someone tell me that if you really want a good career, go into counseling to the wealthy for alcoholism, because they're drinking so much. And to me, you mentioned something about the inner consciousness, and I just thought of this. The greater evidence probably that you have an inner consciousness is that sense of like, there's got to be something else, and I'm not happy.
That's right.
It's the sort of the is that sort of like the dormant inner consciousness that is speaking to you while you're sitting in, let's say someone's sitting in a bar drinking and saying, oh, I'm so miserable, this is not making me happy. I was just thinking of that as a possibility.
Yeah,
the inner consciousness
absolutely.
is speaking to you.
Just have a sense that there's got to be more, like that Peggy song, what was that song? Is that all there is? Is that all there is? Let's keep dancing. But the song is expressing the same thing. I mean, just the idea to say there's got to be more. Where did that come from? If we were just dumb, instinctual beings, we wouldn't even think that. Just to show that consciousness is dormant on this level. It's not dormant inside, because that inside part of that wave of intelligence coming to, whatever you call it, the superconscious, the intuition, it's in there, because that inner intelligence, I mean, it heals the body, it regulates our heart, where the food, how it gets digested, and where the nutrients go. It's inside us. The whole goal of all these teachers, expressing the one source behind them all, is that, we can harmonize our so-called conscious, which I think when you really examine it, it's not that conscious. It's the tip of the iceberg. And if we could work through that and harmonize it with the subconscious, boy, the stuff that's in there, right? We all grew up with horror movies and war movies and the news and the commercials. It's in all of us. And hearing what the parents said when they were angry, or whatever went in there, it's all in there. And we don't even remember it. But to work with that stuff and clean it out, I mean, a real healthy brainwashing, because the brains are dirty. That term brainwashing, I mean, I see it in a good way. I see that the brain needs to be washed, it needs to be cleaned out. So it's like getting the conscious and subconscious synchronizing with each other, so that they can listen to that inner part that we hear something saying, there's got to be more. There must be more. I hope there's more. The superconscious mind knows all this. All you anonymous listeners out there, you all have it in you. We're made in the image and likeness. Go back to square one. if God is all intelligent and the intelligence guiding these galaxies and planets and everything out there, and even on the microscopic level, you know, it's like when a part of that went in us, you know, we didn't start out stupid. You know, we've been conditioned to think we're stupid. You know, and we're you know, to be a polite word, we're ignorant of it. And the great teachers keep coming by, you know, and there aren't many, but they keep coming along. And, you know, if you find one, they lead you to another. And what they're reminding you is that you have it in you. There isn't nothing in anybody that we don't have inside us. If we just learn to turn it over and give some gratitude and thanks and what to say, devotion, you know, what's the word? Loyalty. How about that word that we don't see happening too much in our places? To be loyal to what puts you here. Give it, you know, first 20 minutes, ultimately an hour a day. You have 24 hours in a day. Like I was saying to somebody, you know, people who study dance, you know, 10 hours a day, or any major creative outlet, they spend hours on, and then after 20, 25 years, right, the legs are hurt and injured. The pianists studying the music till their fingers go, or the painters, you know, all the work they put into painting. But all that is geared towards, you know, our physical body to express its truth and express some spiritual truths. But if ultimately this body will feed the worms. The other body, it could be real for those who, you know, still got skeptical minds, which is healthy to be somewhat skeptical, though not too much, because then, you know, if you don't really examine things, you got a prejudiced mind, you know. That's why I go back to Cayce all the time. You look at their life and how he resisted his gift. He didn't come out there saying, here I am, all right, hey, give me $1,000, I'll give you the secrets of the universe in a weekend. No. These people help people who have no money. And then he could have become very rich. All these things that most people run after, power and fame, the guy walked away from. I mean, so it's right there in his life. How many people can say that? We know people like that. And those are the ones that are used by the very aware, you know, loving being that, you know, will say, this is a child of mine that's pretty humble and sincere. It's compassionate. They want to help people. And I'm going to give a little more to it, because, you know, it's like it's a saying, you know, to receive the light, you know, you got to open up your blinds or your shutters or your shades, you know, or your curtains. The light is always there, but we got to do our part, become receptive to it. We got to do something. Like I told you once at the Michelangelo, we got to raise our hand up with that picture of the creation, and God will, you know, come down to you know, commune with us, but we got to make some effort. It's not like we don't do nothing. And it's not like we think we do everything. Either one is dangerous. It's a middle path. You do your effort as much as you can. You know, you can pick up 5 pounds. That's what's great for you. Somebody else eventually could do 100 pounds. That's for them. Your thing is to be where you are and accept it, no matter where you are. Physically, emotionally, mentally, people may be, you know, like Kathryn said, she didn't see herself as pretty. She had a skin condition, but she offered her nothingness with sincerity. And I'd just like to say that I don't see, you know, like Theresa Newman is another great example, the woman who Yogananda introduced me to in his autobiography of a yogi. She didn't eat anything but the host every day for 40 years. She had the stigmata going through the wounds of Jesus. She was joyful. She was prophesizing, and I wish they would reveal her prophecies. But I did see one when my sister was getting ready to pass. My brother-in-law got more religious, not spiritual, but religious. And they said, will America ever be destroyed from without? She said, no. She said, nature is going to last slow. And I concur with, when I look at Michio Kaku or Gary Knowles' diagnosis of the planet, or these, you know, these people who study the weather and the earth changes and the global warming, and they're all catching up to even things Cayce said, you know. But some of them have some dire predictions, and I do believe dire things are going to happen. Very bad things are going to happen. You know, so again, it's going to be 2 different things. You know, it's going to be the best of times, like Dickens says, for those who tune in, and it's going to be worst of times and scary, really scary for those who don't tune in. If you're relying upon these people who are greedy, you're going to be let down as they often, you know, as the people who voted for Trump, they would be losing their health care. So, you know, he just played on their prejudices. But these people are not, anybody look in his life, he's not for the regular working person. He just used to talk, like they all do. Mussolini, Hitler, they all talk about the working person in the beginning. Once they get in, and so did the communists, once they get in, well, they become just as bad as what they were against. So, what's the alternative? What's the alternative? It's not going to be presented to you on the media pushing all these drugs every commercial. It's do your homework, use your willpower, your most precious gift. Go get a book, read the book, read the person's life, and most importantly, don't just read it. Then we're just sending up like parrots repeating things. Put the eternal insights into practice. Eat right, your body's a temple. Learn to meditate, learn to do some deep breathing and affirmations without joining a cult. And then you just receive that, say your prayers to your loved ones here and in the spirit world, and then you go out and you be kind to somebody, say hello to a neighbor and mean it, hug somebody. Help somebody with their food. Pick some food up if they're elderly. Help them with the shoveling, or take care of the animals. Take care of your pets. Treat them well. Spend time with them. Every time I look at my pets, I say, one day they're not going to be here. I already know they're going to put tears in my eyes. But meantime, I also know if I didn't have them, we didn't have them. They would have been in the shelter or put to death. So they'll have their 20 years or so life. But when I see them, I engage them. I'm not on the TV, I'm not on the computer. I look in their eyes, I pet them. They respond. They know when you care for them. And so it seems to be like small things, but these small things are important. And it's a way of, it's a way of expressing our love and not letting it be, stagnant inside of us. And, it's applying what we're hearing, and the more we do that, the more we feel at peace, we feel connected, we feel a joy, and that will grow too. Until ultimately, some of us will make it in this life where we will actually encounter bliss, the bliss within us that it's unspeakable. But nobody's ever searched for God in the history of the planet and really searched and ever said, after all these efforts. It just, any of these people, mystics, saints, sages, they never said, gee, what a waste of time that was. They never say it. They're consistent in what they discovered, And the people who discover that, we can deal with anything, because we know the message of the whole story of the Christmas story is, he came to prove there is no death. Without a resurrection, that story, it's a nice story, he's a good man, but without the resurrection, it doesn't really verify that, we have an eternal body. So this is what we're striving for. It doesn't matter, you don't have money, you don't have much money, you don't have big degrees, you don't have, the fame, which is all fleeting. It doesn't matter. You have life, you're important in our Creator's eyes, and that's the relationship that I would say to everybody. It's beyond your mother and father, who she put there. Your husbands and wives, your lovers, your sisters and brothers, your pets. These are all gifts from the Creator, the unchanging one, the everlasting one. Everything else in life, like I say, is changed. It's all changed. But the only thing that doesn't change is the witness inside us watching it all, and that great source of witness that the ocean of witness that our individual droplets come from. And to find that is to be able to find your strength, your compassion, your joy. And yes, it's not all la-di-da, you feel suffering sometimes. That's another fruit of the Spirit. But this is what makes life worthwhile. This is what will give you spirit to carry on no matter what's going on. You can still smile. Well, thankfully, I want to thank you for giving me a call. I want to thank everybody who's listening, who I don't see or hear, but I know if you're tuning into these talks and other talks, you're certainly searching for more truth and an answer for, in places that are, turning away from places you're not getting answers from. And although I don't see you, I know you're all in the brotherhood and the sisterhood of mankind, and I wish you all health and spiritual wealth and even financial wealth that can come too in time. And because good people share, and that's why I made my peace with that. Good people should have money because they'll share it. They'll share what they can do with it. And so keep on, keep the faith, evidence of things unseen. You don't see good things right now, you don't hear good things, but the evidence itself is the faith. As you persevere, strengthen those spiritual muscles, you'll hear good things and you'll see good things, but even first of all, you'll feel good things. And so I'm glad to know you're okay, and I look forward to our next, gathering on this electronic neighborhood, so to speak.